Welcome back to You Tuned In. Today's episode is unique in the fact that it is not related to any of the previous episodes. I believe that we are in a time of special circumstance, and because of that, I would like to do what I've always set out to do or tried to do in my heart and mind, is to open up good dialogue with authenticity and offer you the ability or the freedom to do the same thing. I want to offer you the ability to communicate about things that are important to you, whether it's to me or to other people, and I want to arm you with the ability to do that authentically, but also responsibly. All right, so today's episode is a lot about indifference. Indifference, when you are indifferent, you say so much more than you think that you say. Especially whenever there's people around you that have a pre-existing notion of your relationship with them, with the way that you guys should feel about one another. You know, imagine going to your kid's school and your kid coming up to you and telling you that this person bullied them or pushed them down or beat them up, and the other kid is just standing there, and you look at your kid and you say nothing, and you just say, let's go get in the car, and you just leave. There's all different types of opinions on how to handle those situations, but if you just did nothing, the only thing your child would have learned is that I'm not really safe with this guy. He doesn't really care about what it is that I'm going through, and he'd be very confused by that, because when he had a problem, I simply did nothing. And I think when it comes to indifference in today's world, a lot of the ways that happens is just silence. When we see something that's polarizing on one side or on the other side of things, we just say nothing. And there's a virtue in saying nothing. There's a virtue when you don't have anything to say, or when you don't feel like that you have enough knowledge to comment on a topic. There's a virtue in saying nothing, but that does not give you license to not gain the knowledge on the topic. I cannot tell you how many times that I've been communicating with somebody who is in reputation for wisdom, or a minister or a preacher, or somebody who cared about the souls of men and women. And we bring up a topic and they'll say, I've just never studied that. That's completely okay. I've just never looked at that. Great. What's not great is if they stay there. I've just never looked at that. And then they do nothing to go forward and try to have better information, so the next time that they're posed with that question, they can answer it more effectively. If a preacher is not, when they're faced with something that's concerning men and women's souls, and they don't have a good enough answer because they don't have insight, they just haven't studied it, if they are not immediately going to try to seek the Lord on that thing, I am going to argue that maybe they have overestimated their care for men and women's souls. Because silence is complicity. We've heard that before. We've heard that quote, silence is complicity. And I think we understand this emphatically in the large things, right? If there's a genocide going on, and it's just like the whole area who's involved with this genocide, they will petition the rest of the world and they will say, do something. Don't ignore us. Communicate. Talk to people about this. Send help. Send relief. Your silence is complicity. When you're silent, you agree. And we understand this on a large scale. But this is also true of smaller areas too. This is true on a small scale. That whenever things happen in the lives of the people that are around you, and you prove to them that you don't care because it's not at your doorstep, your silence is complicity in that. Not just when things happen, when there is unrest, when there is not just injustice. I'm not talking about feeling like you have to be Superman and put on a cape when every time there's some level of injustice. I believe very firmly that we have responsibility towards ourselves and in our sphere. But whenever things are just not good, do you have a church community that's suffering? Do you have a neighborhood that's suffering? Whatever areas that you are in, do you see a gap? Do you see an issue? I remember going to visit Madrid, and I really liked Madrid. Madrid was one of my favorite places to ever go. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most while I was there is that it was insanely clean. And I just kept talking about that the whole trip. Like, man, this place is really clean. There was no trash on the ground. There was no graffiti anywhere. It was just a really nice place. And it wasn't really until probably the end of the first day or maybe the beginning of the second day that I was there that I looked around and I realized there were these really discreet black receptacles everywhere for you to put your trash in. They were really discreet, but they were everywhere in these little areas where if you needed a trash can, you could put it in the trash can. And I noticed that everyone was using them. When everyone is using them, it doesn't feel like it's this massive job. It doesn't feel like it's this massive thing. When everybody collectively agrees, it's my responsibility, then it makes it so much easier. But if you're indifferent in the small things, you're going to be indifferent on the large things. And then you're going to justify that level of indifference. That's what Jesus says. Jesus says that if you are faithful in the little, you will also be faithful in much. If you are unfaithful in little, you will also be unfaithful in much. Judge your own life. Look at yourself and see if that's true. Look at not just yourself, but look at the people around you. Any one of the people around you, you can probably pretty quickly tell, if I needed something, I'm calling this person. Why? Maybe you're the person people call. Do people call you all the time? When something is going on or they need somebody, they call you. Why? Because you've shown to be faithful in the little things. Going to be faithful in the little things, and then you'll also be faithful in the much. This basic premise exists across every version of our lives. When you're at work and you are doing a good job, you're being faithful in the things you're being asked to do, and you are showing up and you are being effective, what is bound to happen sooner or later is someone's going to come to you and say, there's this spot that's opened up. You've done really well in this spot, and we think that you would do really well in this spot. Here's more. In the professional world, we call it the curse of competency. The more competent you are, the more stuff you end up having to do. But that's not a bad thing. If you have the shoulders to bear it, it's not a bad thing. Because it shows true love and care. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're all after. Authentically, is true love and care. You can probably tell by the way that I'm speaking and what it is that I'm speaking about that my mind is on the recent happenings of the world. And it's not just one. There's polarizing things happening all over the place, but it's not just one. It is the overall sense of a lack of value for human life, and it is an overall sense of a lack of care for anyone who does not agree with me. I'm going to say this part slow, because typically I try to make sure that anything that I say is super diffused and you can land wherever you want to land on it, and I'll give you my opinion, but you're open to yours. But I'm going to say this part slowly because this part is legitimate. If you do not have the ability to disagree with someone, state your position articulately, disagree with them amicably, and seek to understand, then you probably shouldn't be talking. You are part of the problem. When you open your mouth, if you cannot season it with grace, if you cannot make sure that there is a measurement system whereby you check yourself, you probably should not be talking. You are a part of the problem. Now, for those who do have the ability to do that, to disagree amicably, to communicate, if you do not use your voice, you too are part of the problem. It's almost like these things, it's like they don't matter until they're right on your doorstep. was thinking about Gideon. If you go and you read in the Bible, Gideon is this servant of God that is called on by God during a time of distress among the people. Things are not good. Things are not going great for the children of Israel. And God comes to Gideon and he calls him a mighty man of valor. And he says, I'm getting ready to do great things for my people through you. And Gideon is immediately like, you're not with us. Look at all these things that are happening to us. If you're really here, why are all these things happening? And God says, these things are happening because of your idolatry. You guys have placed yourself in this position, but I'm going to deliver you. And then we know that in the situation with Gideon, there's some things that happen where he asked God to be clear and specific, using these signs with a fleece. But that's not what I want to get into. The part I want to lean into is the very first thing that God tells Gideon to do after telling him, no, I am with you. He tells him, I want you to go and cut down the groves. Gideon's dad had some groves, and these groves were these elaborate gardens that were made up to go and worship idols. And they had a grove for worshiping idols there, and the first piece of information that God gives Gideon to action is go cut that down. Gideon can't even go there in the daytime because he's afraid of the response from all the people who desire the idolatry. Sometimes the things that are being asked of you to do come with a price. Sometimes the things that are being asked of you to say, they come with an element of discomfort. Am I imagining that every person that has something to say or has some responsibility to do is going to be martyred for it? No, I don't think so. Do I think some will? Obvious. Do I think you need to have the ability to do it anyway? Yeah. And I think that is because that is all about authenticity. I said this episode was going to have nothing to do with previous episodes, but I guess that's not true because everything is connected to something in a way. But fear of doing, so much of the time we don't say anything, we don't do anything because we fear a few things. We fear danger, we fear being disliked, we feel being ostracized, alienation. We sometimes fear death. But you know what we fear most of the time? Discomfort. We fear being uncomfortable. That's the extent of it. I don't want somebody to make me uncomfortable. But with this fear, just like we talked about in previous episodes, that the Bible says perfect love casts out fear. In order to justify yourself doing nothing, saying nothing, you have to simply make a declaration. You have to simply make a prioritization and say, I care about me more than I care about them. Authentically, from an objective standpoint, that's okay for you to say. You have free will on purpose. God did that on purpose. You have free will, but it's important for you to say it because everything else is a lie. Because you wouldn't mirror that on the same side if it was on your doorstep, if it was you. Something happens and your family member finds themselves in a circumstance. Now, right now, as you're thinking, you're probably thinking on this large scale thing. I want to say things that are going to make everybody mad. It can be much, much smaller. Your family member is dealing with something biblically that it maybe is not widely searched out or widely taught about. You've never looked at it because by and large, your family's never had to go through it. But now all of a sudden, your loved one, your brother, your sister, your mom, your son, they're dealing with this thing. And a lot of people call this emotional bias, but I challenge that. So much of the time, whenever we are all on autopilot like drones and our eyes are closed and we're just going forward into something, and somebody does something or experiences something that is outside of what we would naturally agree with, we say, oh, the only reason why they care about that now is because their brother or sister's in it, their mother's in it, they're emotionally biased. And that can happen. That absolutely can happen. I've seen people change the complete way that they think and believe with no other merit than the fact that now the person's in it. But most of the time, The only thing that really happened is that person was caused to challenge their understanding of what was going on because it hit close enough to home. It was on their front doorstep. And there's a Holocaust survivor. He's also an author. His name is Elie Wiesel. And he has this quote that everybody quotes. And they say, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of hate is indifference. The opposite of love is indifference. And I love that quote. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. To hate someone, he goes into this concept. In order to hate someone, you must have to have passionate feelings towards them either way. But to be indifferent towards someone, it's like they don't even exist. But when these things reach us where we're at, or the people that we love and that we care about, all of a sudden, now we need to dig deeper. But I think that's incredibly inauthentic, especially if you say that you value the human experience. This is not even just a Christian problem. It's clear that I'm Christian. I talk to you guys about that all the time, but this is not even a Christian problem. This is a human problem. You can say you value human life and human existence, but if you are indifferent on every issue, then really you value comfortability. But this can be really, really confusing. Everything that I'm saying right now can be really confusing because I'm essentially asking you to care. I'm asking you to care both on large scales and on small scales. As an overarching whole, I want you to care. But what should be your focus? What do you care about? That's the confusing part. With so many hills to die on, what do I care about? I remember during the zenith of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I remember being caught in so many conversations because people would ask me, what do you think about, what do you have about, and all these different things that they would ask me. And most of the time, people were either very shocked about my answer or very frustrated and upset at my answer. I get called all kinds of things, but my basic premise was I would say, okay, challenge your own intentions. Why are you so upset right now? Why do you have a black square on your screen, on your profile picture? Because of solidarity and unity. Unity against what? Against police violence. Okay. Why now? Why do you care right now? Well, because I saw the video. Of George Floyd, and I saw this video and I said, okay, valid. But black people have been showing you guys videos of us getting beat up by the cops since it was on VHS. Why now? Why do you care right now? And what I essentially wanted people to open up and understand is that people cared because it was popular. And I told people, I said, if this is still popular in 5 years, I'll eat my hat. And you see it. You see some of it around. You hear people talk about it. You see the stickers. But by and large, outside of it on the back of somebody's Volvo or sitting in somebody's yard, you're not really going to see a whole lot about it. It's because it was convenient in a moment because it was popular. So with all these different hills to die on and all these different things to care about, how do I choose what to care about? Well, I feel like the answer is very, very simple. It has to be authentic and it has to be simplified. The answer is one thing. Now, obviously, because of my orientation towards God, my one thing is there's only one hill to die on. People, that term may have originated from a military strategy of keeping the hill, but for me, that term is Golgotha. There's one hill to die on, and he did it. There's only one place that has my allegiance, and that's Jesus. Now, while that is this very specific concept, okay, that seems really broad concept. How do I make that specific? Well, you narrow it down by aligning yourself with the principles of Jesus. It becomes very easy. You have a literal manual. You have a live-in guide to align yourself with the principles of Jesus, because that's the hill I'm going to go die on. I'm going to align myself with the principles of Jesus. And then whenever it comes time to not be indifferent, I can consult that text and say, what does this look like? And how can I better be effectual in the spheres that I'm in? If you're not a Christian, if you're not a Christ follower, the answer is still simple. What is bigger than you that you align with? What's bigger than you? You've got to take yourself out of the focal point. You cannot be both in front of and behind the telescope. You're not going to have a clear vision. What's bigger than you? If you are love all people, right? If you are whatever religion you find yourself in, all of them have very similar concepts about how to interact with the people around you. I say all of them, most of them. Some of them definitely do not. But if you value human life, I think that's the one thing we should be able to agree on. All of us are fellow citizens of Earth. We are passengers in a place we didn't ask to be in. We were born here. So align yourself and communicate with and about people in a way that shows you value that as an overarching whole. And then let your minor decisions trickle into that. Be faithful in the little. You know, as always, there's probably several things that I've said that's made somebody upset somewhere. But if you get upset, just remember that you tuned in. And hopefully you'll tune back in.